Welcome to the SEO.co Search Engine Optimization Podcast. Digital marketing essentials and next level tactics. From offsite and on-site optimization to persuasive selling and everything in between. You'll learn actionable tips on what it takes to outright and outrank your competition. Now, here's your host, Timothy Carter.
Thanks for joining me on the podcast. Today we're going to talk about using the scientific method for SEO results. The scientific method is, appropriately enough, the fundamental philosophy and approach that defines how working scientists, approach problems and new discoveries about the world around us. It's the series of steps that led to the emergence of theories as complex and as marvelous as relativity, evolution, and the Big Bang model of the universe. But the scientific method, while most often applied to realms like physics and chemistry, can actually be applied to any problem in the modern world. Because it's the most objective, logical framework we have. It tends to get the best results. Apply that method to your SEO strategy, and you're almost guaranteed to start seeing better, more measurable results. Step 1. Ask a question. The first step is the easiest, as the question in SEO usually is, how can I rank higher? However, in the SEO community, as in the scientific community, the more specific your question is, the more meaningful conclusions you'll be able to draw. For example, asking, why do things fall, is much less specific than, why do two objects fall at the same velocity when outside resistance is removed? Both have scientific answers, but only through multiple rounds of more specific questions are you able to form the broader, more significant conclusions. Start out with a question like, will doubling my number of written articles per week increase my rank? Or will posting more links on local news sources increase my local relevance? Step 2, do the research. Don't just jump in blindly. Do your due diligence first and start researching the topic. You can find a lot of answers here at SEO.co, but there are obviously, a lot of great deal of SEO authorities out there. Eventually, you should find some specific advice related to your question, or if you're really lucky, a case study. Review multiple sources of info before completing your round of SEO keyword research. And if you've experimented with a similar strategy in the past, be sure to look to your own experience for guidance. Eventually, you should have a short list of info that gives you an educated guess on how your question can be answered, which brings us to the next step of the process. Step 3, formulate a hypothesis. Keep in mind that a hypothesis is not a conclusion. The conclusion can only come after the next step of the process. Right now, all you have to do is guess, even if it's an educated one, because it isn't supported by any data you've been able to uncover so far. That being said, your hypothesis should directly answer your question. Again, you'll want to be as specific as possible, because the specificity of your question will help you construct an experiment in the next step that leads you to more thorough results. As an example, in the first step we asked, will doubling my number of written articles per week increase my rank? Assuming you've done your research that suggests the answer to this question is yes, you can come up with a hypothesis like, writing 2 articles per week instead of 1 will result in a sharp increase in average keyword ranks and organic traffic within 2 months' time. The increase over these 2 months' time will be greater than the increase from the 2 months ago until now. Step 4, use experiments to test the hypothesis. You have your hypothesis, now you have to test it. Even if the research suggests that your findings will match your hypothesis, you still have to test it in a live environment for you to be certain of the results. In a scientific setting, you would usually need a control group to serve as the basis for comparison. In some SEO cases, such as testing landing page copy, you can do this with the help of an A/B test. However, in our hypothesis and in many SEO hypotheses, you'll find establishing a control group is impossible unless you host two different versions of your site, which would be far more complicated than it's worth. Instead, make do with what you have. Your previous 2 months of data can serve as the control group. Run the experiment, being careful to avoid any other changes, extra variables that might interfere with your conclusion. Step 5, here we are, form that conclusion. Once all the data is in over the course of that 2 months, you'll be able to look back at your original hypothesis and determine whether it is true or false. If it appears to be true, then hey, congratulations. You now have a bona fide strategy you can permanently integrate into your long-term approach to SEO. If it appears to be false, you'll either have to modify the experiment and try again, or rest confident that the strategy is not an effective one. So, alternate step 6 from form a new hypothesis. If you suspect that something went wrong during the process, that your question wasn't specific enough, or that there's a related hypothesis that still may be true, you can circle back to step 3. Here you'll form a new hypothesis, run the appropriate experiment over the course of the 2 months, and hopefully finding equally enlightening results. With these steps defining your approach as a search marketer, you should have no problem finding and keeping the tactics that best suit your guest or your quest for higher ranks. Objectively and consistently, each time you improve, you'll eliminate strategies that aren't worth your effort and acquire strategies that only give you a benefit. That only comes with testing a thorough scientific method. And that's it for today's episode. So if you would like some help on creating some of that great content so that you can up your SEO game and drive more traffic to your site, come on over to SEO.co and schedule a time to have a free consultation. Learn how we can help you scale your ability to outwrite and outrank your competition.
Thank you for joining us on the SEO.co podcast. We appreciate your time. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit SEO.co for more resources based on today's topic, as well as access to more podcast episodes to help you improve your site's long-term SEO success.